Oh, I am so excited to introduce our Direction, Not Perfection community today to Veronique Ory. She is joining us with exciting news. She has a book release coming out on October 31st of 2022. Author of Shine On and Off the Mat, a registered yoga teacher. Welcome, Veronique.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So excited to have you here. I'm kind of curious because I think there's a yoga saying. I always say eyes on your own paper. Is there a yoga saying that's like eyes on your own mat or something like that?
Hmm. I like to say close your eyes and tune inward.
Okay. Same idea that we're not
hmm
looking at other people's success, other people's what their capabilities are.
Yes, very tempting when first starting out. You can sort of sense people who are just starting out that are always kind of looking around, like, "Am I doing it right?" And then you can tell, not so much by ability, but more just like where someone's attention is, that they've been showing up on the mat for a little bit, but it's less about doing it right and more about tuning into finding their practice, how it resonates for them.
Maybe we just dive right in. And sorry, I feel like I'm cutting off a little bit. Maybe you can weave your story in as we continue to talk here. But I'm envisioning that this is really important to be able to tune in. It's probably this basis. Can you kind of go with what you've seen other individuals come to the mat and like what throws them from enjoying the experience, appreciating the experience, getting the most out of it? Like, what are some of your frustrations or your best tips for those who are going, I really want to do yoga, but
Yeah, I think as human beings, we're really adept at finding excuses that prevent us from doing basically anything that we decide we can't do. Right. So, like, I can't meditate because this person over here is making so much noise and I can't concentrate, or I can't go to this yoga class because, the teacher is, really advanced and makes everyone do arm balances or something like that. So, there's, I think, the potential that we can queue up obstacles for anything. And what I think is really beautiful of tuning into the yoga practice is when we can do what it is, whatever it is that we're doing, even though, right? Like, we
hmm,
can show up even though the situation isn't perfect, and that we can see obstacles and challenges as opportunities for growth. And so it's really hard. But, if someone's phone goes off in the middle of the class, like, maybe it isn't the end of the world. Like, oh my gosh, I was so focused. And then that person, like, forgot to like turn off their phone. And now I'm like completely out of it. It's like, oh, sometimes we forget to turn off our phone. And like, how do we move through that with grace? And so that's, you know, one of the sort of idiosyncrasies, I think, where there's all these things, like, people are like very restrictive about, like, oh, everyone has to take off their shoes before they come in the studio, and there's like this sacredness, and it's like, yeah, also, some people are like weird about like walking barefoot in a public space. So, you know what I mean? It's like everyone has like their quirks and their things, and how do we sort of navigate through all of the idiosyncrasies of each person?
I love this. And I want to hone in or highlight on the like on and off the mat. Cause as you're saying these words, even though, like I'm picturing the off the mat part of this, the I'm going to show up to my yoga today, even though my brain might not be in the best spot. Can you give us some examples of what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say I have never regretted showing up.
Mm,
And sometimes it's a substitute, and I'm like, "Ah, like, I was really looking forward to my regular person," or I, feel kind of lethargic today, and like, I really don't feel like moving my body, or whatever excuses that anyone could possibly come up with. I think doing things even though is probably the really great mantra, because oftentimes circumstances are not perfect. So many people might say, I'm going to come to yoga as soon as I lose 20 pounds. It's like,
Hmm.
okay. Or you could show up today and like show up as you are. And like maybe it'll happen as you're moving your body, or maybe not. But maybe what you're seeking more is just to feel lighter. And wouldn't it feel lighter to decide to do something for yourself? So different things like that, I think, is really important to keep in mind, because sometimes it feels really tempting to say, as soon as I have enough money, as soon as I have this relationship worked out, as soon as my kids are older, as soon as, whatever, there tends to be a something all the time.
I totally agree. And I love that you're saying this and the way that you're saying it. Okay, I'm a dietitian, so I definitely feel like I live in weight management land. And I have definitely heard clients say, yoga when the weight loss happens, to your point. Like people picture it a little bit more as like the once I'm healthy and I can see myself in these poses or see myself doing this. But I've also seen yoga be part of the weight loss journey and of the getting healthy journey, from both the weight management as well as like when people have had eating disorders and being able to like really settle into their body. Talk on all of this for a minute. What are some of your clients that walk through your doors where you're like, this has really helped in this area?
Absolutely. So I'll say the largest part that I think has been surprising to a lot of people that show up to a yoga class in the US, particularly if it's offered at a gym or like a more fitness setting or a community center, they initially show up like, I want to get really long, lean muscles. I want to build more flexibility. It's more of the physical practice. And what tends to happen with consistency and over time, people realize the mental part of it, the emotional part of it. And so there's this transformation that happens when the mind piece is connected to the body piece. And you probably are really familiar with this in the dietitian and nutrition sphere, is like, you can't detach these addictions that we have, to sugar, to fatty foods, or to like the comfort foods and things like that, like apart from like what the stem is. It's like you could take away the cravings for a time. And I've heard people talk about like, these food addictions are very different than like alcohol or drugs, because like we actually need food to survive. And so it's like finding like a rewiring of like, what is the mental process that we go through. I kind of like equate it to like the teenager for like my journey personally, like, oh, I had a really hard day, like I deserve to like, I don't know, eat this like really bad thing, or like I deserve to like not go to yoga because I worked really hard or something like that. And like the brain like plays like these crazy tricks on us. And it's like, okay, actually, what would be more helpful is like, wow, like I had a really hard day. I deserve to move my body in a way that feels fulfilling. I deserve to have a nourishing meal that actually makes me feel good and light and energized. So, and it takes time, certainly, because I kind of think of like these neural pathways, like those old fashioned marble kind of mazes where it's like this groove has been created, and it's like, okay, well, this is the way the marble goes through, or this is the way the thought goes through. And it's like, how do you create a new groove? Like you need to establish a pattern and a habit over a long period of time so that you can practice, okay, I can choose something different this time. And it's something that is actually healing and therapeutic, and something that is long lasting and for longevity for myself, for my family, and all the lives that I touch. And it has this really powerful ripple effect. And in that practice, then huge transformations are possible.
I love your language. I love the I deserve, and not a I deserve a cookie. I deserve to skip out. It's a I deserve to, it's self-care. Like yoga can be self-care and eating well can be self-care. So thank you for describing it that way. You're even breaking down some of my barriers. I feel like the younger me was more like, I need to almost fit in a run or do something else before I do yoga. But the way you're shifting my thinking around this is that it's really more of that meditative shifting of the brain that we could all use and should use every day. So, yes, it's a workout, but it's like a mental workout that we're all not taking advantage of. Does that frustrate you? Do you feel like you have to like shift people's brains before you can pull them into your space?
Yeah, 100%. So I came into the yoga space living in New York City. And as a very type A, OCD kind of person, I came into the space of I want power yoga, I want hot yoga, I want to not be able to wear these clothes afterwards. I want them to be like so sweaty that I feel like I like really did something, you know?
Yeah.
And I have elements of that still in me. However, I feel oftentimes I'm much more attuned to what I need in my soul versus what I've been like maybe conditioned to think or what I feel like is worthwhile. And oftentimes I think we can give ourselves a lot more space to rest than we allow ourselves to. And there are a lot of studies that have been done in terms of the power of a 20-minute close your eyes down and just like let yourself breathe in the middle of the day instead of reaching for chocolate or coffee or like doing like a 10-minute like core power situation on your lunch break or something. So there's all these components and you're very familiar with this, right? It's like you're looking at your diet, you're looking at your sleep, you're looking at, the patterns that you're creating. And then also what's important to note is depending on the season in the hemisphere that you're living in, we have these seasons where it's most appropriate for us to be really energetic and move through that energy. In Ayurveda, we call that like Pitta season, the Pitta season would be, which is kind of counterintuitive. So like that would be like you're very like fiery as a person if you are like that metabolic type. And if you're not,
Mhm.
if you're listening and you're not familiar, you can search this up. This is like thousands of years old. This is sister science to yoga. So it's like a really great partner if you are interested in it. And so Pitta season is in the summer. And so ironically, like the fire season, like since there's already like a lot of existing fire in the energy, it's recommended to do more restorative practices in the summer if you're in this hemisphere. So it's like you would think like, oh, like it's like very hot and like I want to just like, like I feel like energetic. It's like summer energy of, being at the beach and surfing or like, going for a bike ride, things like that. But it's actually like you want to do more cooling practices, like more like yin style yoga, more restorative practices. But then it's also like very personal, right? It's like, how do you actually feel in your body? And like, what do you think when you close your eyes and you slow down would actually be most nourishing to you? And those moments of rest, I mean, like you can talk to, professional athletes. It's like, you have to rest. You have to rest in order to progress, in order to preserve your muscles and your joints and all of the things. So it's really an important part of the yoga journey. And I just think as like, a person with a body, it's really important.
Yes, and I'm going to challenge our listeners today. If you have never tried this, I think that you have to like start going through the process to be where you are, and where our hope would be for the settling in, for the rest. Because to hear it is nerve-wracking. I know for some people, they're like, I can't. If I rest, then I fall off my good routine. And it's just a new journey for you. So just put a little faith and trust here.
Yeah,
And
and
can we
if you're
go?
type A
Yeah.
like me, you could even put it as an appointment in your calendar. like
Yes.
like schedule 20-minute rest, 2 o'clock as a recurring event every day. It's like you can check it off and feel like you get that productivity jolt from it.
Yes. Oh, yes, I love calendar planning. And I'm sure you know this or have done this, but you can change the title of your alarm that goes off. So it doesn't say alarm. It could say, like, it's time to rest, it's time to recharge. And I think that that's motivating sometimes too. It just reminds you, like, I care, I set this. Let's make this happen. I want to talk about your baby, this book that is releasing in a few short weeks here. And what is your like hope and dream out of this book and getting it into different individuals' hands?
I recently went to a workshop with Marianne Williamson in Topanga Canyon, and she said something that I thought was, it hit so deeply to my core, and it's the essence of my book. And I thought, yes, this is it. She says, you can't beat darkness with a baseball bat. You need to turn on the light. And I thought,
Mm,
like, yeah, in this time where there's so much fear and darkness and hate and angst and anxiety and stress, it is very tempting to come at those emotions at the same intensity. And what is actually more helpful is to approach the darkness with the light, right? So
mm,
that if someone is coming at you like in a rage, if you like meet them in a rage, we've all been there. It doesn't usually go well, right? But if we can show up with compassion and kindness and understanding and seek to actually truly listen from our hearts and recognize that their light and your light, they're not separate. And what connects us is much greater than what divides us. And when we can show up more and more to shine our light. So it's another way of saying to show up with vibrancy, to show up with joy, to show up in that space of childlike awe of how amazing it is that we get to have bodies and we get to move them and we get to show up in our relationships and in our work, and if we show up in that space of being truly joyful and excited to be there, that is transformational. It's also a journey, right? Like we'll have dark days. It's not a place to arrive to, but it's more of an attunement. And so I imagine your listeners like being on this journey of wanting self growth and wanting self inquiry and wanting self exploration and just ultimately wanting to be the best versions of themselves, right? It's like, how can you show up in that way that not only inspires you to be like fully present, but then having that connect to everybody around you. And then so you can really find that connection in a way that feels really joyful, in a way that's so impactful. And I feel like that is my heart's work, and it feels really powerful, particularly now. And so that's where that came from, to shine on and off the mat. So it's like you can do a pose and you could feel like super gleeful to arrive into, say, like warrior one shape. And it's like, how does that translate to you, like being a warrior out there in your relationships, in your work, in your life, at the checkout line, when you're at a restaurant? It's all connected, right? They often say the way you do something is the way you do everything. And so it's showing up with integrity and allowing that to be really congruent throughout.
So, when somebody is working their way through your book, because you mentioned storytelling in your book, and I feel like you're starting to maybe just like touch the surface on this, and they are in a pose and they're holding it, are you giving kind of that example that you just gave? How do you help them go into that off the mat spot?
So when I show up to each class, I have a theme. And so that's the outline of the book. There's a unique theme over 52 weeks. And
Mm.
the theme is on purpose, universal, timely, and timeless. So the first entry in my book is let go. And when can we not let go of something? Right. So it's in the book, it's about at that time, March 2020, where everything shut down with the pandemic. And so like the entry point at that time was letting go of the idea that anything is permanent, letting go of your resistance to change. Like that's pretty much like a pretty good consistent practice. So it's the entry point to that time. And then there's also like the universal part of it. So there's the possibility of doing the practice year after year, because depending on what's going on in your life at that moment, you're going to have a different vantage point of how let go hits you right now, right? Like you're listening to this and you're thinking like, oh, like, yeah, I am ready to let go of maybe this relationship, maybe this job, maybe this idea that I'm not good enough or what have you. And and so it's letting yourself sit with it, simmer with it, percolate with it, write about it, maybe move your body through it. And so there's these different ways that you can come into the yoga practice that is beyond necessarily just the physical practice. Although if you're coming to it just for the physical practice, that's okay too, right? Finding your pathway in a way that feels resonant so that you can feel really lit up.
So walk us through this. If somebody was starting this, are they reading slash listening slash watching? Like, is it covering all components? I think
Yes,
I'm still confused. Yeah.
yeah. So it's an interactive book. You could read the stories. You could also do the journal prompts. You could also do the videos. Each story is accompanied by 3 20-minute videos. It's a guided meditation, a vinyasa practice, which is movement with breath, and then a yin practice, which is gentle stretching, lying down or seated. And so you could do all three together, and that would be a 60-minute practice, or trying to really make this accessible. If you have 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon, 20 minutes at night, you can break it up in a way that really suits for your schedule. And then there's also my curated playlists. So I really love how music can pair with the movement practice. So I put my playlists that accompany each of the practices in there. So you can listen to the music with the practice. A lot of my students really like to listen to the music on their drives or like when they're running errands or doing their chores as a way to embody that idea of the yoga practice in all that they do. And it's really nice coffee house vibe, chill music. So it kind of just sets a tone of feeling like you're in parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, like things are okay, even though you might be trying to do a million things at once. So you can do all of the things, or you can choose the individual bite size. They live on their own and they also all work cohesively together.
So I'm picturing maybe a link or like a scan code if you're looking at how does that all attach from book to a web page?
Yes. So it's on Amazon. If you get the Kindle, each practice it links directly. And then if you get the hard copy book, there's QR codes at the beginning. So you can just put your camera to the QR code, and then there will be a link that pops up, and then you just click on that and it'll direct you to the videos or the playlists.
That is awesome. That is so much more interactive. Like I'm loving the journaling alone. And then to think that you can just scan a code and start a practice is amazing. Oh, I'm loving this.
Yeah.
How many weeks is it supposed to take you through?
52 weeks. So a full
So the
year.
year. Okay.
Yeah. So the power of doing something for a full year, and you can attest to this, right, is like you take yourself through all of the seasons as well as like this, different seasons of your life. So you could, theoretically, there's like a lot of like, 7-day challenge or 30-day challenge. And what tends to happen when there's an end date is people are like, okay, I did the thing, and then they kind of like go back to what they were doing before. And the hope with this is it is 52 weeks and that you repeat and you do it again and again and again. And if you've ever done like a multi-year journal, it's really, really powerful because then you can really start to see, oh, like this is where I was on this day last year. And like this has shifted so much and I didn't realize it, but you have that tangible proof. And so you can see like, wow, like I wrote this answer to let go last year, but here I'm like in this completely different place. And how amazing is that?
So important. And I'm going to call out our listeners today. How many people do not track or journal or have anything to look back on? I was just having this conversation with a client because I feel like there's been some similar complaints or like feeling like the process is moving too slow. I'm like, so what are you looking back on that is proof for you to say, I've either excelled, even if it's small, and a lot of us don't hold that proof. And I'm telling you, that journaling component alone, to be able to see and hear your own words come back at you, that, wow, I thought that way last year. I really have changed. And that's what we're looking for, right? Is that like slow and gentle? I'm picturing your marble run that you were talking about. I like that visual. Because I do think people feel like the one marble run's supposed to disappear. And to your point, it doesn't. Our old mindsets are still there, our old habits, but we're ingraining new ones and setting those deeper than the old paths. Because people get frustrated when they feel like I've changed and now I'm back to this old hang up. But if we can just like accept it and know that it's just back there, but still move on, that I think that's so
Absolutely.
important. Yeah. If there was one thing that you prayed for our listeners to hear today that you're like, if you don't really hear anything else, take this one new thing into the new year, what would that look like?
You are capable of so much more than you think you can.
That simple, right?
Yeah.
Which just makes me want to ask the next question though is what has been one of your biggest aha? Like, I cannot believe I can do this.
So a year ago, decided that I really wanted to work on my handstands. So it's like one aspect of the yoga practice. And I'm very well aware that, being able to handstand or really being able to do any pose, like it's not what it's about. But I started to feel like if I could do this, then what else could I possibly have the ability to do? Because it's all connected, right? The way that you might say, I'll never be able to balance on my hands is maybe the same thing like, I'll never be able to achieve like this status in my work or be able to be in a dream relationship or be able to take that dream vacation or like whatever the thing is. And so I started to find practices with a dear friend of mine and just started like showing up once a week. And then all of a sudden, like I started to find myself balancing on my hands. And it really plays into what I was saying. Like you are capable of so much more than you think you can. And it's empowering. It's really, really important because it seems like it's about the shape, but it's so much greater than that. And I think that there's a really powerful way to move the energy in the body to like show yourself physically that you are strong and that you are fierce and that you can stand in your power. And when you show up like that everywhere, like how amazing is that?
Oh, that's so good. Yes, and I can picture because I have a little bit older of a niche. Like I feel like my listeners kind of 40 to 70s. We get the grandmas in the group too. I can picture some people going, "Oh, it sounds great for the 40-year-old." But me as a 70-year-old, what would you have to say to our beautifully aging wise women?
Well, I will say my father is 75 years old and he does a headstand every day. So
Yes.
age, let that never be something that is a deterrent. My oldest student is 93 years old. There's an
Oh,
access point into your yoga practice wherever you are.
thank you. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I love that. Thank you. I just feel like we need these health heroes. I keep thinking I want to like start interviewing every person at the gym who I'm like, how old are you? And like the 70-year-old doing pull-ups, or to your point, the 93-year-old doing yoga. Like that's what we need to see on our Instagram feeds, because that's so empowering and so hopeful. So thank you for that image. And I'm loving you. Thank you. You're bringing such an
Mm,
amazing energy today.
thank
And this
you.
is not goodbye. I can see so many people diving into this year-long challenge with the book. And can you just let everyone know where to find you, and again, like just make sure that we know where to grab the book.
Absolutely. So you can find out all about me at yogawithveronique.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Veronique Ory. And I also have my book Shine On and Off the Mat, which will be available on Amazon starting on October 31st. So I'll send you all those links so you can put them in the show notes. And I also have a special free gift for your listeners. So for people who wanted to get a little taste of it, I'll give you the link to share with your listeners as well.
Oh, that would be fabulous. Thank you. Again, thank you for joining us today. You're such a delight.
Oh, thank you so much. This is such a treat. Thank you.